What if the cleanest station in the galaxy was only clean because someone else was forced to breathe the poison? This is the story of Elena Cross, an ordinary human sanitation supervisor who found a hidden truth inside the vents of the Galactic Council. She was not a soldier. She was not a diplomat. But when her crew started getting sick, Elena did the one thing the powerful feared most. She refused to sign the lie. The cleaner who shut down the Galactic Council, Elena Cross, knew a station was sick before the warning lights did. She knew it by the taste of metal behind her teeth when a filter had been pushed one shift too far. She knew it by the way cheap sealant sweated along a wall seam when warm exhaust ran behind it. She knew it by the small gray stains that appeared where clean air was supposed to leave no trace at all. On Aurelian Spire, those stains were supposed to be impossible. The Spire was one of the proudest administrative stations of the Galaxy Council. It hung above the blue-white storms of Varos 9, full of bright halls, layered habitats, treaty chambers, private gardens, and polished walkways. The top levels held embassies and diplomatic corridors. Delegates from 100 worlds moved through air, so clean it made glass smell dirty. The lowest inhabited levels were different. Behind freight locks and maintenance doors, Earth labor crews slept between service shafts, filter banks, laundry sterilizers, and waste lines. They kept the station breathing. They cleaned corridors after banquets, changed seals after chemical leaks, and scrubbed vents no official map described as anything more important than support access. Elena Cross was the industrial sanitation supervisor for Earth Contract Unit 12. Her job was to inspect those low levels before the morning shift returned. Her name on the safety sheets meant something to her, even if it meant very little to the people above. That morning, 6 hours before the Galaxy Council was scheduled to renew the labor treaty with Earth, Elena stood in corridor low 17. She held a scanner in one hand and a stained glove in the other. Behind her, 3 cleaners waited beside a rolling sterilization cart. They were tired. Everyone on low 17 was tired. A night surge had forced the air system to run hard through the lower filter banks. The crew had been called in early to make the place presentable before the council inspection route opened. The official scanner on the wall pulsed green. The portable scanner on Elena's belt pulsed green too. The streak under her glove did not care. It sat in a thin gray line near an air return seam, almost invisible unless the light hit it from the side. Elena pressed a drop of neutralizer against it. The drop should have cleared, but instead it turned dull yellow and thickened like old oil. Mason Reed, the youngest filter hand on her crew, leaned closer. "Is it mold?" he asked. "No," Elena said. She did not explain right away. A good supervisor did not give fear a name before she had proof. She took a sample strip, sealed it, and looked down the corridor. The Earth's sleeping pods had not opened yet, but Elena could hear people coughing inside them. Not hard, not dramatic, just small dry coughs, the kind workers learned to hide because a visible illness could get a contract reviewed. 2 days earlier, a laundry technician had come to her with red eyes and a nosebleed. The medical kiosk had called it adaptation stress. Last week, Mason had joked that everyone on low 17 was starting to taste coins in their sleep. Elena had not laughed. She had kept a piece of her brother's old mask filter in a clear pouch inside her locker for 7 years. Tobin Cross had been a filter technician on this same station. He had been 26 when his lungs failed after a double shift in the North Scrubber Bank. Council medicine had called it human respiratory weakness. Earth Contract Services had called it a tragic individual case. Elena had called it unfinished. The stain on the wall had the same color as the stain on Tobin's filter. Then a message flashed on Elena's wrist pad. Joran Pike wanted status. Joran was the Earth Contract Manager on Aurelian Spire. He was human, older than Elena by 20 years, and he had been kind to her mother after Tobin died. He also knew how to survive inside a system that made kindness small and paperwork large. Elena tapped the line open. "Tell me you are signing low 17 clear," Joran said before his face had fully resolved. He stood somewhere brighter than she was, in a mid-level office with clean walls behind him. "The council delegation moves through in 40 minutes, he said. "Ambassador Hale is already under pressure." We cannot be the reason Earth looks unprepared today. Low 17 is not clear, Elena said. Joran's jaw tightened. The station system says it is. The station system is wrong. Elena, do not start there. Not today. She looked back at the sleeping pods. A woman inside, one coughed twice and then went quiet, as if even the sound cost too much. I found residue near the air return, Elena said. The neutralizer reacted yellow. I am pulling samples and holding the corridor. A second face joined the call. It belonged to Rael Tivik, a council maintenance liaison. His skin was pale blue, his eyes were set wide and flat, and his tone was already bored. Supervisor Cross, the official atmosphere monitors show no hazard, Tivik said. You are authorized to complete surface cleaning, not delay diplomatic access. I am authorized to refuse a safety clearance if I find an unknown contaminant. Unknown to your kit, perhaps. Not unknown to the station. Elena held the sample strip toward the camera. Then tell me what it is. Tivik glanced down, probably at a private display. Residual load within tolerance. Within whose tolerance? For the first time, he looked directly at her. Joran cut in fast. Elena, sign the corridor conditional if you have to. We can request a deeper inspection after the treaty session. People sleep here now. People keep their jobs if this treaty renews. The line went quiet around that sentence. It was the sentence Earth workers heard in 100 forms. Keep your head down. The contract feeds families. Do not make the powerful regret letting you in. Elena closed the sample pouch. I am not signing, she said. Joran lowered his voice. You are a sanitation supervisor, not a treaty official. Then stop asking me to sign a lie like one. She ended the call before he could answer. Mason watched her. With careful eyes. Are we in trouble? He asked. Not if I am right, Elena said. He tried to smile. And if you are wrong? Elena looked again at the gray seam. Then I apologize to people who still get to breathe. She sent the crew to pull clean water samples from the condensation traps. Then she walked to the maintenance access panel at the end of the corridor. Her clearance was not high, but sanitation supervisors had strange doors open to them. They could not enter treaty chambers, but they could open a blocked drain under one. They could not sit with ambassadors, but they could inspect the ducts that kept ambassadors alive. Elena entered the maintenance log for Low 17 and searched the environmental classification. The first line was ordinary. It identified the area as residential support for Earth Contract Unit 12. The second line made her hand still. The system classified the zone as a biological exposure area for high survival, low priority workers. The words were not hidden. That was what made them worse. They had been sitting in the system, written in the plain language of infrastructure, because no one who mattered expected a cleaner to read them and understand what they meant. High survival and low priority were not just technical words. They were a decision. Elena read the line twice. Then she copied the log, sealed it behind her personal encryption, and opened a deeper stack of records. She found different thresholds for different zones. Embassy Row had near zero tolerance for reactive vapor. Council chambers had triple filters and continuous atmosphere polishing. Military liaison housing had automatic purge cycles after every surge. Low 17 had a threshold 7 times higher. Her wrist pad chimed again. Joran, then Tivik, then station security. Elena ignored them all. A clean place, she had learned, was not the place that looked bright. It was the place where the weakest person could stand without being asked to endure what the strongest person could survive. Aurelian Spire looked bright from above. From below, it had begun to look like a machine built to decide whose lungs mattered. Elena did not go to a formal laboratory. She did not have access to one. If she asked through official channels, the samples would pass through the same hands that had already called the corridor safe. Instead, she used the sanitation bay. The bay sat 2 levels below the sleeping pods, between the laundry sterilizers and the waste solvent tanks. Its walls were dented from years of carts and pressure hoses, but its bench was clean because Elena made it clean. She had trained her crew to label every sample twice and never trust a lid someone else had sealed. Now she set out strips from the wall seam, condensation from the air return, dust from the bunk vents, fibers from used respirator pads, and shaving from the outer lip of the North Scrubber Bank. She worked quickly, but not carelessly. Every sample was photographed. Every timestamp was copied to a private storage bead she kept taped beneath the bench. That habit would have sounded paranoid to anyone who had never watched evidence disappear. Mason returned with 2 water tubes and a cough he tried to swallow. "Sit down," Elena said. "I'm fine." That was not a suggestion. He sat. He was 23, broad-shouldered, and still had the embarrassed pride of someone who hated needing help. Elena saw the red at the corner of his eyes. "How long?" she asked. "Since the night surge." "Haste." He hesitated. "Like a battery." Elena's hands paused for half a second. Tobin had said the same thing in his last message. "It tastes like a battery in here, Lena. If I sleep after shift, wake me before the council maintenance audit. I want to show you something." No one had woken him. Elena ran the first test, then the second, then a third using a human safety chart from Earth Industrial Law, not council tolerance tables. The results formed a pattern too clean to be chance. The contaminant did not spike high enough to trigger the council's general emergency rules. It stayed under the station's official limit by a narrow margin. But for humans exposed over long shifts, it crossed into chronic hazard. It irritated tissue first, then the eyes, then the lungs, then the nervous system. It moved slowly enough that medical chaos could call it stress, weakness, poor adaptation, or anything except what it was. It was poison delivered politely, in doses small enough to deny. Elena needed medical records. She found Sela Rin in the dockside clinic, cleaning a tray of small instruments under a light that flickered every 30 seconds. Sela was the dockside clinic medic. She was not human. Her species came from a low-gravity moon beyond the Pelian Reach, and she had translucent ridges along her wrists that darkened when she was tired. On Aurelian Spire, Sela treated dock workers, cleaners, cargo loaders, and anyone too low status to reach the main medical deck. Sela looked up as Elena entered. "If this is about Reed, he came by yesterday and told me not to tell you." "Mason." "Headache, I burr, mild tremor. He said you would pull him from shift." Elena exhaled through her nose. "I should have." Sela glanced at the sealed pouch in Elena's hand. "You found the gray residue," she said. It was not a question. Elena set the pouch down. "You knew." "I suspected. Knowing gets people removed from housing lists. Suspecting keeps them alive a little longer." "How many?" Sela turned to her terminal. "Earth workers? Too many. Other labor species? Some. Earth gets the highest cluster because your sleeping section sits beside the overrun path from the diplomatic scrubbers." She opened a file. Names scrolled down the display. Mason Reed, Alias Santos, Breton, Farah Quinn, dozens more. Symptoms repeated in different words, but the shape was the same. Elena read the official labels attached to the cases. Human adaptation stress, individual respiratory weakness, non-critical atmospheric discomfort, contractor fatigue. Each phrase was soft enough to pass through a meeting without causing shame. Sela lowered her voice. There are older files too. One was marked restricted after a fatal collapse. Tobin Cross. Elena did not move. Sela watched her, then softened. "I did not treat him. I came after. But I found his note while cleaning archived records. He logged a concern about the North Scrubber route. He filed a report? Yes. It was dismissed. The note says he lacked engineering authority." Sela pulled up a degraded audio fragment. Tobin's voice came through thin and broken by static. "North Bank is taking overflow from upper purity cascade again. Low 17 readings stay green because the category table is wrong. If anyone checks human charts, this is not safe. Lena will know. She always reads the stains." The recording ended. The clinic seemed to shrink around Elena. For 7 years, council records had made Tobin sound weak. For 7 years, she had carried grief with no shape for the thing that caused it. Now the shape sat in front of her, not as a monster, but as a maintenance route. Sela waited. Elena copied the file with steady hands. "Who closed it?" she asked. "Council Infrastructure Office," Sela said. "Earth Contract Services acknowledged the closure." "Joran." Elena found him in a contract office halfway between the low decks and the public levels. The room was small, but it had real carpet and filtered air that did not taste of metal. Joran Pike, Earth's contract manager, stood when she entered. Then he stopped when he saw her face. "You knew about Tobin's report," Elena said. Joran looked suddenly older. "I knew there was a report. You acknowledged the closure. I was told the council had reviewed it. You signed." He looked away. "Elena stepped closer. My brother said the category table was wrong. He said low 17 was not safe for humans. You signed the paper that buried that." Joran's voice dropped. "Do you know what Earth had that year? We had 3 colonies short on grain, a shipping strike, and 14,000 workers waiting for off-world contracts." He swallowed hard. "The council offered renewal only if we accepted their habitability standard. If we refused, they would give the work to a species that could live on half the oxygen and leave no complaint record. So you gave them us." Pain moved across his face. "I kept people employed. Tobin was employed." That struck him. For a moment, he had no answer. "I did not know it would kill him," he said. "But you knew it asked humans to endure more." "Elena, every species endures something in a mixed station. That is the price of being allowed in." "No," she said. "That is the price people like you agreed we should pay without telling us the number." His shoulders sank. "If you take this public today, Earth may lose the renewal. Thousands could be sent home. Some do not have homes to return to. If I do not take it public, the renewal locks this standard for 10 more years. We can negotiate quietly later." Tobin tried quietly. Joran closed his eyes. Elena turned to leave. "They will erase your samples," he said. She stopped. Joran opened a drawer and removed a small access wafer. "Sanitation overflow archive," he said. "Old system. Most council engineers forgot it exists because they never used the lower deck backups. If your brother's readings survived anywhere, they will be there." Elena took it, but did not thank him. "Why give me this now?" she asked. Joran looked toward the sealed window, beyond which delegates moved through clean light. "Because I told myself I was buying time," he said. Then time became 7 years. When Elena returned to the sanitation bay, 2 of her sample locks had been opened. The seals were broken cleanly, not by accident. Her main terminal showed a diagnostic reset she had not ordered. The hallway camera outside the bay had lost exactly 17 minutes. Mason stood near the bench, pale and angry. "Security came through," he said. "They said it was a routine contamination audit." "Who led them?" "Oryx people. Council badges, not Earth. They took the wall residue and half the filter fibers. I tried to stop them." Elena checked the underside of the bench. The storage bead was still there. She allowed herself one breath. Then alarms pulsed from Mason's belt monitor. He looked down, confused. "I am fine," he said. His knees folded before Elena reached him. The sanitation bay became motion without panic. Elena lowered him to the floor, opened his collar, checked his airway, and called Sela over the emergency line. Mason's breathing was shallow but present. His eyes fluttered as if he wanted to apologize for causing trouble. "Stay with me," Elena said. He tried to speak. She leaned closer. "North Bank," he whispered. They increased draw. "Diplomatic route. Wanted it clean before the walk-through." His lips trembled. "We took the extra. Low." Elena looked at the scrubber map on the wall. The pattern became complete. The upper levels had to look flawless for the treaty session. The system had redirected contaminated air into the lower filters to polish the council route. Low 17 had not been accidentally exposed. It had been used as a buffer to make the high halls smell clean. Sela arrived with a medical card. Her eyes hardened when she saw Mason. "If you keep him here, he may worsen," Sela said. "If we move him through the public lift, they will stop us." Elena stood. On the emergency panel beside the bay door was a red control she had never used. Industrial sanitation supervisors had one hard authority that even council offices disliked but could not remove. If a contamination pattern crossed multiple zones and official review was delayed, a certified sanitation lead could trigger a biological containment lock until the hazard route was confirmed. It was meant for spills, waistline ruptures, and foreign microbes. It was not meant for Treaty Day. Elena placed her palm on the control. The system asked for the cause. She entered one line. Human exposure hazard concealed by false tolerance category. The panel flashed amber and asked her to confirm station route lockdown. Joran's voice came through her wrist pad. Elena, do not. Whatever you are thinking, call me first. Vance Auric, the station security chief, broke in over the station channel. Supervisor Cross, step away from the emergency control. You are not authorized to interrupt diplomatic movement. Mason coughed behind her. Sila looked at Elena and said nothing. She did not have to. Elena précède confirme. Across Aurelian Spire, doors began to close. Not all of them, just the important ones. The service locks around Low 17 sealed first, then the access corridors above them. Then the diplomatic route between Embassy Row and the Treaty Chamber sealed too. Transparent barriers descended with soft chimes in halls where officials had probably never heard an alarm meant for workers. The station voice announced a biological containment event in calm council tones. The treaty route was closed. The renewal session stopped before it began. For the first time in the history of Aurelian Spire, the lowest deck made the highest deck weight. The first face on the containment display belonged to Vance Auric, the station security chief. He was a broad, silver-skinned officer with a voice trained to make disagreements sound disorderly. Supervisor Elena Cross, he said, you will release the lockdown immediately and surrender your control access. Elena stood in the sanitation bay with Mason on a medical cot behind her. Sila was setting a breathing mask over his face. Half of Elena's crew watched from a doorway. Not until an independent hazard review is opened under human safety thresholds, Elena said. You do not set council thresholds. I set my signature. I will not clear a zone that is harming my crew. Auric's expression hardened. You have trapped council delegates on an active treaty route. I have stopped the contaminated route from being certified clean. Another window opened. Director Kale Othran appeared, calm in a dark formal coat. He was the council habitability official responsible for interspecies safety standards on Aurelian Spire and across the wider network. His face was narrow, his features almost delicate, and his eyes held the patience of someone explaining gravity to a child. Supervisor Cross, Othran said, I assure you that Low 17 is within approved safety limits. Approved for whom? For its assigned biological category. High survival, low priority. Othran did not blink. That is a technical allocation phrase. It is a ranking. It is a resource model. Elena stepped closer to the display. You pushed upper-level contamination through human housing to polish the diplomatic route. Mason Reed is on a medical cot because of that model. My brother died because of that model. Othran's expression did not change, but the silence around him did. Other faces appeared in the background. Delegates were caught behind clean barriers. Aides whisper behind them. Your personal grief does not authorize station disruption, Othran said. There was the old trick. Make the evidence emotional, then dismiss the emotion. Elena opened the first data packet on the public containment screen. It showed the zone thresholds in clean council formatting. Embassy Row had near zero tolerance for reactive vapor, triple filtration, and continuous purge. The treaty chamber had the same level of protection with an independent backup. The military liaison residence had low tolerance and double purge. Earth contract Low 17 had high tolerance, delayed purge, and overflow acceptance enabled. Elena heard someone behind Othran say a word in a language her translator did not catch. She said, You did not rank us in your speeches. You ranked us in your filters. The words traveled faster than she expected. They moved through the locked corridor feeds. They appeared in subtitles on delegate panels. They reached the workers gathered in the lower deck. They reached Ambassador Rowan Hale, Earth's representative, who had been standing outside the treaty chamber trying to prevent Earth from being blamed for the delay. Within 10 minutes, Earth was being blamed anyway. Ambassador Hale appeared on Elena's display from a side chamber. His formal coat was still open at the collar. He was in his 50s, tired-eyed, and careful in the way diplomats became when every word could harm someone. Supervisor Cross, he said, I need to understand exactly what you have done. I stopped the treaty route because the station is using Earth housing as an exposure buffer. Hale looked from Elena to the data and back. Can you prove that beyond your local samples? Yes, but Council security removed some of the samples. Or cut in. Evidence was collected under contamination protocol. 17 minutes of hallway camera disappeared while they did it, Elena said. Hale's expression changed. Not much, but enough. Joran appeared beside him. He looked as if the last hour had taken years off his life. Elena, Joran said, release the diplomatic route, and I will request a private review before final signature. Private reviews buried Tobin. Hale looked at Joran. Tobin cross-filed a prior report. Joran did not answer quickly enough. Othrin spoke instead. Ambassador, Earth has benefited from Council labor access for decades. If one contractor supervisor can interrupt treaty proceedings based on misread sanitation data, then the Council must reconsider whether Earth can manage its own workforce responsibly. There was the threat in its formal clothes. Earth could lose the treaty. Earth workers could lose housing. Elena could become the woman who cost thousands of humans their place in the stars. The lower deck crew understood it, and their faces shifted. Fear came into the room like cold air. Elena felt it too. She had always felt it. Every human on Aurelian Spire carried the same silent calculation. How much insult was worth a bed? How much risk was worth a paycheck? How many times could you cough and still say you were lucky? Mason's breath rasped behind her. Elena looked at the display and said, if Earth has to buy access by letting its workers be used as filters, then the treaty is not access. It is disposal with a contract attached. Othrin's tone sharpened. You are making political claims outside your competence. No, Elena said. I am making a sanitation claim. Something dirty is being moved out of sight. That is my competence. The lockdown held. The hour after the lockdown was the longest hour Elena had ever spent on the station. Alarms did not scream because the Council disliked ugly alarms. Instead, soft warning tones repeated through the lower decks. Each one was polite enough to make the danger feel like an inconvenience. The barriers stayed sealed, and the air handlers shifted into containment mode. That mode slowed the flow through low 17, but did not clean it. Workers gathered at corridor windows and looked toward the closed lifts as if they expected punishment to descend through them. Elena moved among them because standing still would have made fear louder. She checked masks. She moved 2 older workers away from a return vent. She told the laundry crew to keep wet cloth off the floor because the residue was binding to moisture. She ordered every used filter bagged instead of thrown into the waistline. Each instruction gave people something to do besides imagine what the Council might do to them. A woman named Alia Santos stopped her near the sleeping pods. Alia ran the sterilizer room and had 3 children on Earth she supported with station pay. If they canceled the treaty, Alia said, what happens to us? The question was not hostile. That made it harder. Elena looked at the workers around them. They were listening while pretending not to. I did not know, Elena said. Alia swallowed. That is not the answer I wanted. It is the only honest one I have. A pipe fitter near the wall muttered. Honesty does not pay passage home. Elena turned to him. Neither does a medical record that says you were weak after the station made you sick. No one answered. She softened her voice. I'm not asking anyone to pretend the cost is small. I'm asking you not to let them make you pay it quietly and call that a job. That was when the first worker took out a private recorder and filmed the gray seam. Then another filmed the stack of used filters. Then a third pulled up old messages from people who had been transferred away after complaining of breathing problems. The lower deck did not become brave all at once. It became less alone by inches. One person saved a file. Another named a symptom. Someone else admitted they had been waking up with blood on their pillow for weeks. Elena listened to each one and wrote names. Names mattered. Systems love categories because categories did not have mothers, debts, birthdays, or brothers. Sela, the dockside clinic medic, pulled Elena aside after stabilizing Mason. If this reaches the hearing, they will say your samples are contaminated by your own lockdown. They already took the originals. Then use the pattern, not one sample. Make them answer why the same symptoms follow the same routing. Make them say all of us are imagining the same thing in the same vents across different shifts. Elena studied her. You have done this before. Sela's wrist ridges darkened. On my home moon, mining companies called lung scarring altitude adjustment. By the time anyone proved otherwise, half the older workers could not climb stairs. She paused. I learned that the first lie is always medical language. Elena nodded. Then help me keep the language plain. Good, Sela said. Plain language scares them more. Together, they built a simple chain for the hearing, one that could survive interruption. First, show the body, with Mason breathing through a mask. Second, show the place, with low 17 beside the overflow path. Third, show the rule, the high survival and low priority classification. Fourth, show the design, the priority purity cascade. Fifth, show the history, with Tobin's warning and the repeated clinic labels. Elena wrote the 5 points on the back of a sterilization form. It looked too small for the weight it carried. Mason watched from the cot. You should add one more, he said. Elena looked over. He lifted a weak hand toward the closed ceiling. Show them what the upper route smelled like after they pushed the load down here. I worked there once. You could breathe like you were inside a rain tank. They know what clean is. They just bought it with us. Elena added the 6th point. Who received the clean air? That was the part no tolerance chart could soften. Because the lockdown held, the council could not keep the matter on a service channel. Delegates were trapped behind transparent barriers, and news feeds inside the station began to ask why the treaty route was closed. Lower deck workers sent images of corroded filters to each other, then to friends on other stations, then to anyone who would listen. 2 hours after Elena pressed the control, the Galaxy Council convened an emergency explanatory session. Elena was ordered to attend. Not invited. Ordered. She changed out of her contaminated outer suit in the sanitation bay and washed her hands until the gray line under one nail faded. She placed Tobin's filter pouch in the inside pocket of her clean work jacket. Then she copied the storage bead 3 times. 1 copy went to Sela. 1 went to Mason, who was conscious again but weak. His voice was raw beneath the breathing mask. What do I do with it? He asked. If they close the hearing, Elena said, send it to every lower deck channel you know. He gave a small, tired grin. So all of them. All of them. The last copy stayed with Elena. As station security escorted her upward, she saw Aurelian Spire change around her. The freight lift opened onto mid. Levels where the light was warmer and the air had no taste. Delegates watched her pass. Some looked angry. Some looked curious. Most looked as if the presence of a sanitation supervisor in a council corridor was itself a kind of contamination. Vance Auric, the station security chief, walked beside her. You should have opened the route when ordered, he said. Your officers took my samples. I secured potential contaminants. You broke evidence seals. Careful, supervisor. Elena looked ahead. That is what I've been trying to be all day. The emergency chamber was smaller than the formal treaty hall, but it was still too large for 1 worker. Its tiers rose in a half circle, and each seat was shaped for a different body. Some were tall and narrow. Some were water-filled. Some hung from ceiling braces. At the center stood a floor mark for witnesses. Elena stepped onto it in work boots that had been scrubbed, but still looked like they belonged below. Ambassador Rowan Hale, Earth's representative, stood to one side. Joran Pike, the Earth contract manager, sat behind him, pale and silent. Director Kale Othran, the council habitability official, stood opposite Elena, surrounded by legal aides and infrastructure specialists. Vance Auric remained near the security arch. A council moderator opened the session with a statement that made Elena sound like an equipment malfunction. He said the emergency hearing would decide whether Supervisor Elena Cross of Earth Contract Unit 12 had unlawfully disrupted diplomatic proceedings through unauthorized containment measures. Elena waited for the sentence to end. Then she said, "No one here is asking why the containment measure existed." The moderator looked down at her. "You will answer when addressed. The answer is because the council knows some hazards are invisible until someone refuses to move. A ripple moved through the chamber. Aurelian spoke smoothly. The council must not allow this hearing to become theater. The supervisor acted from grief, incomplete data, and a misunderstanding of interspecies habitability science. Elena looked at him, then explained the science. He almost smiled. Gladly. A station. Housing many species cannot apply a single comfort standard. Each group has distinct metabolic tolerances. Efficient habitability requires managed variation. He turned slightly toward the tiers. Humans, by council record, display unusually high recovery after environmental stress. That makes them suitable for certain work zones without undue risk. The words were polished. They sounded almost reasonable. Elena could feel some delegates relax into them. She had expected that. Systems like this survived by sounding sane. Director Aurelian, she said, making his role clear for everyone listening, you are saying the council may expose humans to more hazard because humans keep coming back to work. That is not what I said. It is what the category does. Managed tolerance is not harm. It is the practical basis of shared habitat design. Elena nodded once. She kept her voice plain. If an oxygen-rich species can survive smoke longer than a water-breathing species, do you vent smoke into their room? That is an unfair simplification. It is a simple version of your rule. No, it ignores scale. Then scale it, Elena said. In a shared living zone, safety should be measured by which body? The strongest, the most useful, or the easiest to replace? Aurelian's eyes narrowed. By accepted tolerances. Accepted by whom? He turned slightly toward the moderator. The council standard was negotiated with Earth Contract Services. Elena looked at Joran. Every face in the chamber followed her gaze. The moderator called Joran forward. He walked like a man approaching a debt. Manager Pike, the moderator said, did Earth Contract Services acknowledge the high survival category for Earth labor housing? Joran swallowed. Yes. A low sound passed through the chamber. Aurelian seized it. There. The category was not concealed from Earth administration. Elena kept the question simple. Was it disclosed to the workers living under it? Joran closed his eyes for 1 second. No. Did Tobin Cross file a warning before his fatal collapse? Joran did not look at her. Yes. Did you sign the acknowledgement closing that warning? His voice broke at the edge. Yes. Ambassador Hade turned toward him slowly. Joran lifted his head, and the words came out with the exhaustion of 7 years. We were told the readings were within council tolerance. We were told refusal could cost Earth the contract. He swallowed. I believe we can negotiate better later. I believe keeping people employed would keep them alive long enough for that. Elena did not spare him, but she did not hate him in that moment either. She heard the trap beneath his confession. Council pressure had made fear look like responsibility. Aurelian remained composed. A tragic administrative history does not prove current danger. No, Elena said. The current danger proves it. She opened Tobin's file first. His old audio filled the chamber, thin with age. North Bank is taking overflow from upper purity cascade again. Low 17 readings stay green because the category table is wrong. If anyone checks human charts, this is not safe. Lena will know. She always reads the stains. Elena felt the words land in places she could not see. She did not look up until the recording ended. Then she placed Tobin's filter pouch on the evidence stand. The gray stain inside the clear seal looked very small in the huge room. This was returned to my family as a personal item, she said. For 7 years, I thought it was grief. Today I learned it was evidence before I knew how to read it. She opened the next file. Mason's medical readings appeared first. Then came Sela's clinic records, photos of filter corrosion, and threshold tables from Embassy Row, the treaty chamber, the military residence, and Low 17. The point was simple. The cleanest rooms had the strictest protection. The worker housing had the highest allowed exposure. The pattern became harder to call emotional with every line. Aurelian tried another path. Supervisor Cross is comparing zones with different species profiles and different functions. Embassy Row must be held to the strictest neutral standard because it hosts varied delegates. Earth housing hosts humans. Human tolerance is relevant. Elena nodded once. So if a toxin damages humans after long exposure, the human housing threshold should be lower, not higher. You're using Earth industrial law. For Earth bodies, Council law governs this station. Then Council law has been measuring our lungs with someone else's ruler. Ambassador Hale stepped forward. His diplomatic caution had not vanished, but something harder had entered it. Director Aurelian, he said, under Earth safety law, would Low 17 have been considered habitable during the last surge? Aurelian looked to one of his engineers. The engineer, a small being with delicate breathing frills, hesitated. The chamber waited. Elena knew the moment. Every hidden system had one. It was the moment when the truth was not fully free yet, but it was visible enough that lying required everyone to join hands. The engineer spoke quietly. No, under Earth human exposure charts, Low 17 would require red zone restriction. The word red moved through the translators. Red zone, not discomfort, not adaptation stress, not weakness, hazard. Elena turned to Aurelian. How long? He did not answer. She looked at the engineer. How long would Low 17 have qualified as a red zone under human charts? The engineer's frills trembled. Intermittently for at least 8 standard years. 8 years. Longer than Tobin had been dead. A sound came from the Earth section. Someone cursed softly. Joran sat down as if his legs had lost their agreement with the floor. Aurelian raised his hand. Again, this assumes that Earth charts supersede Council negotiated tolerance. They do not. The system is functioning according to design. There it was. Clear at last. Elena looked up through the tears of the chamber. That is the point, she said. The system did not fail. It worked. It moved dirty air away from rooms with power and into rooms with people who were told to be grateful. She looked toward the closed treaty route beyond the chamber walls. It kept your treaty hall clean by making our sleeping deck breathe the cost. For the first time, Othrin's calm cracked. You are turning infrastructure into accusation. No, Elena said. You turned accusation into infrastructure. I only found where you installed it. The moderator called a recess, but the chamber did not settle. Delegates spoke to their aides. Earth channels lit up. Lower deck feeds began carrying clips of the hearing. During the recess, Ambassador Hale came to Elena near the witness mark. They will offer a settlement, he said. Compensation. Local repairs. No admission. Will you take it? Hale looked tired enough to be honest. A year ago, maybe an hour ago, possibly. Today, with this record, no. He lowered his voice. But understand what follows. If we push for a full standard change, Council blocks will say Earth is trying to rewrite multi-species law because one supervisor panicked. Then do not let them make this about panic. They will make it about you. Let them, Elena said. I know what I am. Hale studied her work jacket, her scrubbed boots, and the stain that still shadowed one sleeve. Yes, he said. I think you do. When the session resumed, Othrin's side moved exactly as Hale predicted. A senior delegate proposed a controlled resolution. Elena would be released under probation. Mason and a list of affected workers would receive medical care. Low 17 would be refitted. The treaty would proceed after a delay, and a private committee would review habitability language in the coming cycle. It sounded generous to anyone who had not spent years living under private committees. Joran looked at Elena with open pleading. Take it, his face said. Take the rescue. Do not risk the people who still have jobs. Elena looked at Mason's name on the medical list, then at Tobin's filter. Then she looked at the threshold table that would remain legal on every other station if she accepted. Ambassador Hale turned to her. He did not ask the question out loud, but she heard it. Can you prove this is bigger than Aurelian Spire? Elena opened the sanitation overflow archive using Joran's wafer. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the old backup system responded. Files appeared from 12 stations. They were not full records. They were not perfect ones, but they were enough. Similar categories. Similar overflow routing. Similar clinic labels. Earth labor housing placed near scrubber load paths. High survival classifications attached to delayed purge schedules. Human. Adaptation stress repeated across years and distances. The chamber went still in a different way. Othran's voice dropped. That archive is not authorized for public review. Elena looked at him. Neither were the lungs it measured. The moderator ordered the display sealed. At that exact moment, Mason Reed sent his copy. Sela sent hers. The lower deck crew sent everything else. Data spilled through Aurelian Spire's public observation channels. It did not arrive as one dramatic blast. It arrived as a flood of ordinary proof. Maintenance maps, clinic logs, filter photographs, housing classifications, deleted camera intervals, red zone comparisons, names of workers whose symptoms have been filed under weakness instead of exposure. Other stations began to answer. A laundry sterilizer from Harlan Gate sent photos of identical gray stains. A doc medic from Vare Outpost sent the same clinic labels. A human pipe fitter on Orson Ring sent a message saying their workers avoided lower housing during surge cycles because even the crew knew the air was wrong. The hearing could no longer pretend it was hearing only Elena Cross. It was hearing the underside of the council. The public release did one more thing the council had not expected. It gave other delegates a reason to look at their own service staff in a room. A water habitat representative from Mirwin requested a pause, then asked whether their maintenance divers had also been classified by recovery tolerance. A small trade envoy from the Cynic worlds demanded access to the waste heat maps under their sleeping quarters. A delegate who had looked bored at the beginning of the hearing now looked unsettled because his translator had rendered high survival, low priority into a phrase from his own legal history. The phrase meant expendable by usefulness. Othran tried to gather control by widening the problem until it sounded impossible to solve. You see the danger, he told the chamber. If every group begins challenging technical categories through emotional testimony, the council will lose the ability to operate shared infrastructure. Every corridor will become a legal dispute. Every vent will become politics. Elena, answer before the moderator could stop her. Every vent already was politics. You only called it engineering because the people under it did not have the floor. Some delegates reacted with anger. Others went still, which meant the words had landed. Ambassador Hale leaned closer to Elena. Stay with that, he said. Do not let him make this a cost debate. But Othran was already turning toward cost, because cost had defended the system for years. He projected a station model above the hearing floor. Bright lines showed air, water, heat, pressure, and waste routes running through Aurelian Spire. It was beautiful from a distance, like a living jewel. Then he adjusted the model to show what would happen if every mixed labor zone required the strictest resident standard. Red sections bloomed across the station. Capacity warnings appeared. Reconstruction estimates filled the side columns. This is what the supervisor demands, Othran said. Not a moral sentence. A material reality. Less housing. Fewer contracts. Delayed trade. Reduced access for developing worlds that depend on council facilities. The argument was clever because part of it was true. Safer systems would cost more. Some corridors would close. Some contracts would slow. The council had hidden harm beneath efficiency, but efficiency was not an illusion. It was a machine people had built because it served someone. Elena did not deny the cost. Show the current model, she said. Othran paused. The current one, Elena repeated, with the exposure routes visible. Not as clean flow, as body load. The chamber waited. Othran did not move. The engineer with the breathing frills looked at the director, then at the moderator. The system can display that layer. Do it, Ambassador Hale said. Othran's face tightened. He gave no permission, but the moderator ordered the layer opened. The model changed. The beautiful lines became weighted shadows. Dark flow gathered under Embassy Row, then dropped through maintenance ducts into Low 17 and 2 other labor zones. The treaty chamber glowed clean at the top. Below it, the model showed human sleeping pods sitting along the path where the station placed the cost of that glow. No speech could compete with that picture. For a few seconds, the whole council looked at the architecture of its comfort. Elena pointed to the dark band under the treaty route. That is not a necessary compromise. That is a choice. You designed the station to protect the rooms that could complain first. The engineer lowered his head. Othran said, "It is one optimization among many." "Then optimize differently," Elena said. Othran stood rigid as the feeds multiplied. "This is a reckless release of unverified operational material." Elena said no. This is what verification looks like when the people in charge keep losing the reports. Ambassador Hale stepped into the center space beside her. His voice carried the trained steadiness of Earth, speaking not as a petitioner, but as a civilization that had finally found the document it needed. "Earth moves to suspend the labor treaty renewal," he said, "pending full review of all habitability categories applied to human workers across Council facilities." He continued before the opposition could interrupt. "Earth further demands independent inspection authority for every station using human labor under Council contract." A delegate from a high-gravity species objected. Another asked whether Earth understood the disruption this would cause. A third warned that rewriting habitability standards could force expensive rebuilds across half the Council network. Hale did not blink. If your clean rooms require hidden exposure zones, then disruption is not the problem. It is the bill coming due. Othran turned on him. "Ambassador, multi-species civilization depends on tolerance management. Equality of environment is impossible." Elena answered before Hale could. "Then stop calling it safe. Call it what it is. A decision about who can be asked to suffer quietly." The chamber fell into a silence that felt almost physical. The moderator tried to steer the session back toward procedure, but procedure had lost control. Delegates were receiving messages from their own lower deck staff. Some looked angry for the first time at Othran, not Elena. Others looked afraid because they recognized the architecture. It was easier to condemn one station than admit many had been built the same way. Sela appeared on a side display from the dockside clinic. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "I treated these workers. I treated humans, Ver, Sanik, and my own people. The pattern is not random." She drew a breath. "But humans were marked for the highest tolerance in mixed labor zones because they kept returning to work. Their endurance was used as proof that the exposure was acceptable. That is not medicine. That is accounting." Mason appeared beside her, pale but awake. "I was told I was lucky to work on the Spire," he said. "I believed it. I still want work. But I do not want a job that needs me to pretend breathing hurts because I am weak." Elena looked at him, and something in her chest loosened. Not because the danger had passed. It had not. But because the workers had stopped whispering. Joran stood slowly. His voice was rough. "I helped accept the category. I told myself survival was a victory. I was wrong. Survival is not consent." That sentence did what his earlier confession had not. It gave the fear a name. Othran tried one final argument. "If the Council applies the strictest biological standard in every mixed zone, entire systems will need redesign. Costs will rise. Housing capacity will fall. Some species may lose access while modifications occur. Is Earth prepared to bear responsibility for that?" It was a clever move. Make justice sound like scarcity. Make protection sound like theft. Elena had heard versions of it all her life. She thought of Low 17, where workers counted coughs and called them normal. She thought of Tobin's voice saying she would know. She thought of the gray stain that had waited 7 years for someone with the right job to read it. "No one here has to guess the answer," Elena said. "Every clean system already has a rule. You design for the point of failure." She faced the chamber now, not just Othran. "You do not build a pressure door for the average impact. You build it for the impact that kills people if you are wrong. You do not set a fire alarm for the person who smells smoke last. You set it for the person who cannot run fast." She let the chamber hear the simple truth. A shared habitat should be measured by the weakest lung in the room. If a place is only safe for the body that can endure the most, then it is not safe. It is convenient. The phrase moved through the translators. The weakest lung. It was not a technical term yet, but everyone in the chamber understood it faster than any chart. Ambassador Hale seized it. "Earth submits a formal amendment," he said. "All council facilities housing human labor or mixed labor populations must apply the weakest lung standard. He continued before the opposition could interrupt. Air, water, chemical, thermal, and biological safety limits must protect the most vulnerable resident species in a zone. No worker population may be assigned reduced protection because of documented endurance, recovery rate, contract status, or replacement cost. Earth further requires independent inspection routes beginning in worker housing and maintenance areas, not diplomatic corridors. The debate that followed lasted hours, but the story had already turned. Council blocs resisted. Infrastructure offices demanded time. Trade delegates warned of delays. Othran fought to preserve the language of managed tolerance, but each defense returned to the same exposed center. He was not arguing that workers had been safe. He was arguing that the council had the right to define safe in a way that protected its cleanest rooms first. The public feeds made that impossible to hide. By the end of the emergency session, the treaty renewal was suspended, not canceled, not won in full, but stopped before it could turn the hidden category into another decade of law. The council issued an interim order under pressure from Earth and several smaller labor worlds. All high survival, low priority classifications applied to human housing were frozen. Independent medical review was authorized. Earth inspection teams were granted access to lower deck environmental systems across council facilities. The weakest lung standard was not yet permanent law, but it entered emergency language with enough force that no one could pretend it had not been named. Director Othran was not arrested in the chamber. Systems rarely offered that kind of clean ending. He was removed from immediate authority over human labor facilities pending review, and his department was placed under external audit. Elena accepted that. She had never believed dirty systems vanished because one official left a room. What mattered was this. The hidden route was no longer hidden. When the session ended, Vance Auric approached her near the chamber exit. For once, he did not order her to move. Your lockdown violated 3 station movement protocols, he said. Elena looked at him and preserved one emergency protocol. He held her gaze for a long moment. The review board will decide. It can start in low 17. Something almost like respect crossed his face, though he seemed uncomfortable with it. I expect it will have to. Joran waited outside the chamber. He looked smaller without his arguments around him. Elena, he said, I am sorry. She could have answered many ways. None of them would bring Tobin back. None would erase 7 years. Help Ambassador Hale get the station list, she said. Every contract, every category, every place they called us high survival and low priority. He nodded. I will. And Joran. He looked up. Do not call fear strategy again. His eyes reddened, but he accepted it. No. Elena returned to the lower decks through the same freight lift that had carried her up. This time, she was not escorted by security. Ambassador Hale had offered to send her with official aides, but she refused. She had work clothes on, and her crew was waiting where work actually happened. The lift opened on low 17. The air was not clean yet. That mattered. Victory did not smell like flowers or polished glass. It smelled like shut-down scrubbers, open panels, temporary masks, and tired people who were finally allowed to say the room was hurting them. Mason sat on a crate near the sanitation bay with a medical wrap on his wrist and a stubborn look on his face. Silas stood beside him, checking a portable monitor. The rest of Elena's crew filled the corridor. Laundry workers, filter technicians, dock cleaners, 2 pipe fitters from another section. People who had spent years moving aside for everyone else. No one cheered at first. The silence was too full for that. Then Mason lifted a small strip of temporary signage. The old sign on the service corridor door had read service access only. The new one, printed badly on emergency label stock, read primary inspection route. Elena looked at it longer than she meant to. Mason said, figure we should get used to the new language. A few people laughed. It came out rough, then warmer. C'est la hand d'Elena en masque. Do not stand there breathing the evidence. Elena took it and put it on. For the first time all day, she smiled. They did not fix low 17 that night. No honest story would claim that. They sealed 3 ducts, replaced 2 emergency filters, moved the sickest workers to temporary clean housing, and marked every unsafe seam with bright tape. Elena signed nothing clear. Instead, she signed a first refusal log under the new emergency order. The form asked for the reason for refusal. Elena wrote that the zone was unsafe for the weakest lung present. The next morning, the first independent inspection team arrived from Earth. Not through the diplomatic hall, not through Embassy Row. They entered through Low 17, behind Elena Cross, past the sleeping pods, past the stain seam, and past the old filter bank where Tobin had once heard the station breathe wrong. Delegates from 3 labor worlds came with them. Council engineers came too, quieter now. Vance Oric watched from the security line and did not interfere. At the North Scrubber Bank, Elena opened the panel and showed them the route. "Start here," she said. "Not upstairs. If the station lies, it lies downward first." No one corrected her. Weeks later, the feeds would give the event cleaner names. The Low 17 lockdown, the Cross hearing, the weakest lung amendment. Some would call Elena a hero. Some would call her reckless. Director Othrin's allies would insist the story had been exaggerated by labor agitators and Earth diplomats. Council lawyers would spend months arguing over definitions. But across the stations, workers began checking their own walls. They photographed stains. They saved filters. They asked which tolerance table measured their air. They refused to let green lights into conversation their bodies had already started. Earth's position changed not because the Galaxy Council grew generous. It changed because one human sanitation supervisor had forced the cleanest rooms in the galaxy to admit what they had been built on. Elena kept working. The first month after the hearing was not clean or simple. That mattered to Elena because simple victories were often the easiest ones for officials to frame and forget. The lower decks still needed temporary scrubbers. 2 workers had to be transferred to long-term care. Earth inspectors argued with council engineers over access panels that had never been opened for anyone outside the infrastructure office. Every answer led to another locked cabinet, another obsolete code, another quiet admission that the official map did not match the live station. Elena walked those inspections with the same clipboard she had carried before the lockdown. At first, council engineers treated her like an unwanted witness. Then they began asking where condensation gathered after surge cycles. They asked which vents workers avoided sleeping under. They asked why laundry staff kept spare masks near the sterilizers even when official protocol did not require them. Elena answered because the point had never been revenge. The point was to make the station tell the truth before it hurt someone else. The biggest change came from the workers themselves. They no longer described symptoms as complaints. They described them as readings. A cough after a filter change became a data point. A metallic taste near a vent became a location note. A red-eye after night shift became a reason to inspect, not a reason to apologize. Elena saw pride return in small, practical ways. People stood straighter when officials entered the corridor. They corrected wrong labels. They refused to call unsafe housing difficult conditions. Words had been one of the tools used against them, and now they guarded words like seals on a pressure door. For Elena, that change was worth more than any apology issued from a polished chamber. It meant the next warning would not have to wait 7 years for someone to believe it. She still inspected drains. She still argued over solvent inventories. She still corrected young workers who thought a loose glove seal was a small thing. Her job did not become glamorous, and she did not want it to. Glamour was for rooms that had never flooded with waste vapor at 3 in the morning. But after Low 17, when Elena Cross entered a station with her inspection kit, officials moved differently. They no longer saw only a cleaner. They saw a record of what happened when the person sent to make dirt disappear decided to show everyone where it came from. On the anniversary of Tobin's death, Elena returned to the North Scrubber Bank alone. The old gray seam had been cut out and replaced. The air still carried the faint industrial smell every working station had, but the metal taste was gone. A small plaque had been mounted near the panel, not in the grand style of council memorials, but in plain Earth lettering. It named Tobin Cross and all workers whose warnings had been filed as weakness. Elena stood before it with her hands in the pockets of her work jacket. She did not speak for a while. Then she took out Tobin's old filter pouch. The stain inside looked smaller now, but not less important. Evidence did not have to be large. It only had to survive long enough for someone honest to hold it up. A message arrived from Ambassador Hale while she stood there. The council had voted to extend independent inspection rights beyond human facilities. The weakest lung standard would enter permanent review across all mixed labor habitats. It was not final yet. Nothing in the council ever was. But it had moved from a worker's sentence into the language of law. Elena read the message twice, then closed it. She looked at the scrubber bank, at the replaced seam, and at the corridor where her crew would soon arrive for morning inspection. The galaxy had spent centuries looking upward for authority. It looked toward chambers, banners, high seats, and polished halls where powerful voices decided what safety meant. Elena Cross had made it look down. Down to the vents. Down to the filters. Down to the workers who coughed quietly because they had been told endurance was a privilege. And from the lowest floor of Aurelian Spire, the truth had risen high enough that even the Galaxy Council had to breathe it. When Elena Cross walked back into the lowest level of Aurelian Spire, she did not return as a hero in shining armor. She returned with a work badge, tired hands, and the same quiet courage that had carried her through every locked door, every insult, and every lie. But the station was different now. The people who once looked past the cleaners finally understood the truth. Sometimes, the person closest to the floor is the first one to see what the powerful have buried beneath it. And sometimes, humanity does not rise by asking for respect. It rises by proving that no system is too large to answer for what it has done. If this story stayed with you, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who enjoys science fiction stories about ordinary humans standing against impossible systems. Your support helps this channel grow, and it helps more stories like this reach the people who need to hear them. Thank you for listening. And until the next story, remember this. The galaxy may build its highest towers above us, but humanity has always known how to find the truth from the ground up.